Yeah, that's good. Oh, here it goes. All right. So, good afternoon, and welcome to the Spring Q&A panel. The idea of this talk is for someone is going to ask questions and someone is going to answer. It's my second panel, and I still didn't figure out who should ask and who should answer. How? Yeah, a lot of people and a lot of places. So here is an additional 2 chairs, by the way.
I have a seat here you can have.
Ah, you're going to stand?
If I need to, yeah.
No, but there are more chairs is over here. Yeah, so here is an empty row, and here's an empty row. And you will have the bonus to sit in the front. Just real close to those idols. You can hear them breath. I wanted to say that, but it wasn't polite. Yeah, but there is you can just grab the mic. Okay.
Start?
Yeah, picture from stage, of course.
I need something very... Oh. I need to take care of something very important. Okay, before...
We invented a hashtag, pick from stage. And this is what we do now.
Can you say open source? Open source. Oh, that's so
good job.
Eccolo, bravissimo.
Okay, guys, so let's get started. We have only one Josh, only one Nicholas, and only one Evgeny, and so little time. So, yeah, Q&A panel, Spring. I'm Baruch, I will be the host. I have mic open all the time, so I will troll you to death. I'm going to interrupt you continuously, and you only have one mic for 3 of them, so you will do it one by one. Please introduce yourself and your connection to Spring. How you are even connected to Spring, Josh?
Hi, my name is Josh Long, and I'm the developer advocate for Spring. I work at Pivotal on the Spring team.
Hi, I'm Nicola Frankel. I work for this company called Hybris. Hybris is an e-commerce platform which uses Spring under the cover. I'm also working on Spring Boot Varadin add-on, and I've worked very much on Spring integration testing.
My name is Evgeny, and I'm not working in any company, but I'm using Spring since 2007. I very love this framework, and I think I know a lot about the Spring core at least.
All right, guys. So I will start with a warmer question. Yeah, go ahead.
Don't you guys think that this conference name is a little awful?
Yeah,
What if it was like SpringConf? Wouldn't that be a little better? Yes.
Yay!
Okay, I'm just wondering. It's just because I care. You know, I really care about the name.
Okay, so let me start with the question about that. It will be like a softball, an easy one for you and very short one. Yeah. What do you think about Java EE versus Spring?
Well, what is Java EE?
Yeah.
All right. I told you it was an easy one.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, do we have another mic for the audience, by the way? And you will shout.
Yes.
All of you. Okay, so let's exactly so. No to shout or no to... no, but I cannot ask questions and give answers with the same mic. It won't work. Okay, let's try it out. So, I know what I will do. I will just... You know what I will do? I will give you my mic. Because I don't need mic for trolling. I can do it without. Okay, so this will be yours. All of you.
People in the back, there's like 6 spots up here.
Just pass it around. Okay. Okay, guys, so let's get started. Questions? Yep.
Why do we have 3 annotations, service, component, and repository, and what is the difference among them?
So the question was, why do we have 3 annotations? What is the difference? Add component these are stereotype annotations. The same kind of, think of them as like, they're not the same, but when we talk about stereotypes, think of UML, the idea of a role, okay?
Much closer.
Oh baby. So they're roles. They define the role that this bean is going to play in your application. they're mostly documentational so that you can understand what they're doing. At service, at controller, at rest controller, and at repository are all just specializations of at component. They all have at component on them. They're called meta annotations. And you'll see in other Spring frameworks that there are other annotations that are annotated with at component. So again, some of them have specific semantics. Like for example, even though at controller is annotated with at component, which means that every controller is a valid Spring Bean, we have some parts of the framework that look for those annotations and, for example, expose it as a REST endpoint or an HTTP endpoint, right? So does that answer it? Does that help? Yeah, sure. Please.
So, for example, annotation at repository will change a little bit of behavior so that any exception related to the database, when it will happen, it will be wrapped with some Spring exception. So it will be easier to you to switch in the databases from one to another without changing some exception handler because you have the same exceptions. And actually, I wanted to ask if there is some additional behavior for service annotation. I heard it's somehow related to transactions. Okay. So it's just for good code. Okay. By the way, you have method from the context get beans annotated with. So for example, your team lead asks from you to do something common to all services. So how can you know which bean is service and which bean is a repository and which bean is just a component? So you can take you can invoke get beans annotated with service.class and you can get the map of all these beans. So okay.
So, and in order to add a little controversy, I would advise you not to use those annotation, but to do explicit injection.
No. No, he didn't mean that. This is not what he meant.
I meant it very earnestly. We just had this nice talk just before.
Yeah, no, we should address that. We should address whatever Nicholas just said. Yeah, you need to reply to that.
Well, it's your choice, right? You have the choice between explicit configuration in one place using XML or Java config, or Groovy config, or there used to be a Spring Scala project, or
Properties file.
Yeah. Years ago there was a property file thing. Yeah, there's a lot of Spring does not care at runtime how you tell it about the class that you want to manage and the properties that it has and the constructors. That is all just metadata. They're all the same kind of thing at runtime.
Almost, except of Java config.
Well, but even that, it's just a bunch of bean metadata.
There is a lacking bench of bean metadata.
There's a what?
I have a question for you. And whoever attended the Spring Puzzlers yesterday know the answer. So you have this bean definition in Java config. And the bean definition created by Java config lacks a very important part of information about the bean. What do you think it is? I love trolling those guys. Scope.
It doesn't have the ID, it doesn't have the name of the class, and it doesn't have the name of the init method.
So everything, it doesn't have everything?
No, I have no idea, but hold on. The point is at runtime, they're all basically the same thing, and so the container doesn't care where it comes from. This is not like that other technology where you have, servlets that you can't inject a servlet, not that you want to, but you can't inject a servlet into an EJB. And EJBs can't inject things from CDI without special connections, and and JSF managed bean can't inject, different components. These are all different component models that don't know about each other. And over time, they're slowly making it so that one component can do tricks and have the same services as another. But with Spring, it's all one type of bean. Everything can have AOP. Everything can be dependency injected. It's all the same type at runtime. So he doesn't like implicit configuration, which is automatic. He doesn't like auto wiring, but it's fine.
For a reason.
No, it's. Yeah.
Who said what reason? Very good question. So the thing is, first, if you self-annotate your classes, your bean and your class will be the same. So your class won't be reusable in different scopes, for example. Yeah, I know I'm right.
Well, okay, so
Next subject.
yeah, so
Talk about the problem. It's very important for So when you declare the bin via Java config, so you, for example, you have add bin and you have some code inside the method which is annotated with that bin annotation. There is no metadata in the bin definition about the name of the class. You don't have this information because when you just write a method in Java, you cannot know what this method will return. When you declare the bin in XML, you should write the exact name of the class, and this information will be inside bin definition. So how can you solve this? Actually, I have some suggestions how this problem can be solved, but why it's still not solved? Because it can, it can be a very serious problem. For example,
open and pull request.
for example, I want to write some bin factory postprocessor, and this bin factory postprocessor want to look for some metadata in the class, which is bin. And I don't know the name of the class.
Okay, which features will be planned for the Spring 5?
The question was which features will be planned for Spring 5? We don't know yet, actually. We're actually yeah. the Spring 5 is, we're actually having discovery meetings later this year. We're having discovery meetings later this year, and right now we're very interested in understanding big features. So I guess the right answer is, what do you want to see in Spring 5? We don't do things just for the sake of doing them. We don't solve problems that nobody has. So if you have some ideas, please, we'd love to see it. But it is about to be time to start thinking about this. No, God, stop. So yeah, I don't know. What do you want to be in Spring 5? Yeah. Just do good. Yeah. Spring Boot. That'd be awesome.
I saw you already using Lombok in Spring Cloud. So what is the vision of such annotation processors? And also I saw configuration properties AP. And what's next? So will we use Lombok in core Spring framework, for example?
God, I hope not. Like, the guys on the Spring Cloud team, Spencer, he actually brought Lombok. Lombok is an annotation processor that does code generation at compile time. You don't need to have it when you run that code.
You need to.
Both of them, I'm gonna.
One of them.
Yeah.
Use one of them.
So.
Declare the bin in the XML and Java config.
Yeah, here.
All of them.
I don't want this. So you don't need to care about that. I don't know where else we'll use it, but me, I hate it because I have to. Every time I open a project up that has Lombok, it's like, oh, come on, it doesn't compile, and I have to do the thing. And it's only okay because you don't have to care about that. We just use it as an aid on top of Java. I don't know. As for whether that'll be in Spring Core, I somehow very seriously doubt it. But who knows?
Who is using Lombok right now in production?
We have Groovy, why do we need Lombok?
Yeah. Good answer. Questions? Oh.
This is not a question from you.
Exactly.
So, question. How many of you are using Java 6? Don't be ashamed. You're among friends. It's okay. It's okay. I'm here for you. Open source hugs. Open source. Okay. How many of you using Java 7? Okay. So that was just end of life on April. I'm just saying. Like, security updates will be coming, but maybe now's a good time to demand Java 8. How many of you using Java 8? Okay. How many of you using Groovy? Groovy, okay. How many of you are using Scala? Okay.
Oh, that was I love it. I have to take a picture.
What?
Like double, Groovy double from Scala?
Oh yeah, but that's in this audience.
That's a good audience.
Sure,
You
yeah.
taught me
I
native
love it.
and-
Hey, it's awesome. So, what about anybody here know about Kotlin?
Where is Nikolai?
Nikolai is not here.
Okay, so no one. So
What about Ceylon? No?
where is
Okay.
Gavin? Gavin is not here as well.
Yeah. So what about, Maven? Anybody here using Maven? Okay, open source hugs. What about Gradle? Anybody using Gradle? Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good option.
You guys are kicking so much butt.
SBT. Who knows what SBT is?
Yeah, who knows what it is? Who has used it on purpose? Okay, just wondering. Okay, any more? Oh, Tomcat. How many of you using Tomcat? Just wondering. How many of you using WebLogic?
I told you, I don't know which direction it should go. WebLogic. Oh, sorry about that.
I don't even know.
Sorry, man.
Good.
Sorry for you.
Oh, I feel bad. What about WebSphere? Anybody here? I am here for you. I'm here for you.
You can cry on Josh's shoulder after the talk.
What about Wildfly or the application server formerly known as JBoss? Anybody? Okay, cool. Anything?
Josh, maybe now is the time to ask about Groovy, because
We
you
just
love
did.
Groovy.
We asked about Groovy. You fall asleep.
No, Tomcat 6, Tomcat 7, Tomcat 8. Oh, that's so good. Okay, am I missing something besides? Is that guy that is that guy that uses Glassfish here?
No, he's not here. He is here.
The one person, he's always in my talks, and he's the same one that uses NetBeans.
Yeah, how about NetBeans? How about Eclipse?
Using Eclipse? That is so okay. IntelliJ.
Yeah. Alright.
Wow, amazing. What about NetBeans? Are you here, sir? The one guy?
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
You're right. It's the same
He's
guy.
he follows me to every country. It's the same guy.
You pay for expenses?
No, he's just there. He's like, no, yeah, NetBeans. So
I'm afraid after this comment he won't come to your
no,
talk
it's okay.
ever.
NetBeans has great Spring support. Actually, the Geertron, yeah, great guy. I love what they're doing there. So, all kidding aside, it's always one. It's like, oh.
So how about Spring? You want to ask about Spring?
Are you guys using Spring? Okay, so there's some people that aren't, which is interesting.
Don't know nothing about trolling. I expected no hands now. Let's try it again. Who's in Spring? Good.
Yeah.
Got it.
Awkward. What about Spring? Okay, so Spring
Yeah.
2.5. Oh. You don't understand. People still say yes, and I'm like, oh. What about 3.0 from 2009? Okay. What about 3.1 from 2011? 3.2 from 2012?
Just keep it up.
4 from 2013 or whatever.
Good.
4.1. Snapshots of 4.2.
Always.
Yeah, build snapshots.
Spring MVC.
Spring MVC. How many of you are using Spring MVC? How many of you are using
Spring Data.
Spring Data? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, nice.
Okay, wait.
Spring Mobile.
Spring Mobile. Nah, it's
Spring
okay.
Mobile.
It's okay.
Spring Social. Spring whatever, I just invented something.
Spring Data REST. Yeah, that
Spring
one.
Data REST. Yeah, that's good.
How many of you are building REST APIs with Spring MVC? Okay. How many of you are building REST APIs, period? Oh, so it's the same group. Now, Spring Boot. How many of you are using Spring Boot?
Yeah, nice.
That's awesome. Hands up. Keep it up. I'm just trying to figure out where we are. That project, Spring Boot, just became the #2 most popular project of all the downloads from Spring.
That was the idea, right? It was the most important runtimes in.
But I mean, so after Spring itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's more popular now than Spring Security, which is very interesting because Spring Security, well, first of all, it's the only, I mean, how many of you use Spring Security, actually? That's a great point. Right? Everybody's going to use that.
Right, of course.
It's like saying who uses Spring. Even people that don't use Spring still use Spring Security because what's the alternative? Right?
Shiro?
Yeah,
Shiro.
that's the same guy who's using NetBeans.
No, that's the one that uses.
I know, Apache.
The JBoss. That's the one that uses JBoss, I think. Shiro, no? It's
No,
JBoss?
it's an Apache project.
Ah, it's Apache.
It's
It's NetBeans. Yeah,
it's the one guy. There's always one guy who uses Apache Shiro, but Spring Security is by far the most common. Not just, and you don't have to have Spring to use it. You can secure, a JSF app.
Okay, now you should stop talking.
Yeah.
They ask the idea is they ask the questions.
Now you ask questions. I just want to know where we were.
Ask about Groovy, please.
Yes.
No questions. You just nail them down.
Yeah.
No.
Why?
Why what?
You know why? You know what?
Don't hit him, please.
What did I do?
So please answer why.
Okay, I can answer that.
42.
No, I know. I think I know what this means. Why Pivotal finished the spring? Yes, this is what we want.
Groovy.
Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
I don't know.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, so the question was, why did Pivotal defund Groovy and Grails? I don't know. We don't have a good answer. It was a stupid, to me, and people on the Spring team, nobody is happy about that. As you know, Groovy ended up at Apache, and Grails ended up at Object Computing. So they're both projects that will continue, and Spring Boot still uses Groovy, and we all on the Spring team, we love Groovy, so, and Grails, which builds on Spring Boot. So again, we have nothing against it. It's just, I don't know. We also got rid of some of the JavaScript stuff we were doing.
But who cares about that?
Well, I did. I loved it. These are great people, and I feel bad, but it's not cheap to maintain a programming language, as you know. So
I'm not sure about Groovy. How many employees do you have in Pivotal?
we had 4 or 5. I mean, that's the thing.
No, in Pivotal in general.
Yeah, a lot. So
Yeah, and Spring and Groovy and Grails team, it's 6 people on the payroll.
yeah, but it's not. The point is, we couldn't afford it. It's almost $1 million. So every year. Now the thing was that if you're looking at the language people, the people that actually maintain their own language out there, you've got Microsoft, you've got Google, you've got Apple, you've got Oracle.
TypeSafe?
Well, okay, we can talk about money, but yeah, where's that? Yeah. So the point is, make profit. On making profit on a language is very, very expensive, and
this is a marketing and PR decision. It's like being cool and being open source.
I agree. So I don't know. So right now, Spring, obviously, we are super useful because we are a component that ties together everything else. So that's obvious. I don't understand why we let go of the Groovy and Grail guys. If that's the answer, I don't know. Nobody understands it. We're not happy about it, but they're great people, and I promise they were taken very, very good care of, as you probably know.
I have a T-shirt for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just remind. No, it's this one.
Oh, I have that one.
Ah, okay. So no T-shirt for you.
So I could use another.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about it. So now everybody's said, and yeah.
I just want to ask how many guys are using OSGI. So and the next question is why Spring doesn't support any more OSGI? No, that's not.
Good luck.
I don't have it here. You answer it.
Good luck.
Next question.
I don't know. Okay. I have a question about Spring Boot. So now it's a really cool thing. No buts. Do you have any ideas about developing of this? I know it's like green thing yet.
Not just green, but yeah. Go on.
What ideas about developing of Spring Boot? So what features should we expect? Maybe 1 year.
So Spring. This is silly. Thank you. Merci. Huh? Yeah. So Spring Boot. Some of the most interesting stuff that I can see happening with Spring Boot right now isn't in Spring Boot. We are adding features to make the situation better. We just added, for example, servo and we added more support for the actuators, for collection of metrics and so on. That framework is getting enhanced. We're always adding new auto configurations. As Spring itself has more projects, there's going to be better auto configurations where you always keep Spring Boot up to date. But for me, personally, and I contribute to Spring Boot, so I feel like I'm allowed to say this, but maybe I'm not. For me personally, the most exciting stuff that's being done with Spring Boot is the stuff that's being built on top of it. Spring Cloud is the first project that we have that depends on Spring Boot. So Spring Boot is now the baseline for that, not Spring Framework, but Spring Boot. So we're taking this auto configuration mechanism even further, and of course Spring XD is also based on Spring Boot. Spring XD is our turnkey big data processing framework, and that's an amazing thing you can do. Soon we'll have the ability to do XD modules talk to Kafka, talk to Hadoop and to MQTT protocols and all these things, and they're just you take advantage of the Spring Boot programming model for these big data processing solutions, So I think that's really exciting. So Spring Boot itself is growing, but I don't know what huge thing we can add. I think it's a lot of small stuff. It's like adding more support for different kinds of metrics and collections, things like that. Development, we have a new feature coming in 1.3, which I think is super slick, which is, did you know that to read a jar, the jar manifest in the byte stream is actually at the end of the file? So you have to read backwards, which means that you can put a shebang line, a pound, exclamation mark, and all that stuff at the very beginning of the file, and Unix will operate it. So you can have like a shell script that loads itself and then executes it as a jar. Do you understand what I'm saying? So imagine a shell script that reads its own byte code and then loads the back of it as a jar. So it does Java minus jar on itself.
It's like a Groovy script.
It's like any old program on any Unix operating. You can just /foo the jar.
No, but for Groovy, it's like then you get all the Java stuff inside, which you won't get for a shell script.
Right, I think. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. But so the point is, you can now build native deployment assemblies. You don't really have to do Java minus jar.
Okay, can I ask? Thank you. My question is about is Pivotal is going to provide any hot swapping agent? For example, as Nicholas shows us yesterday his presentation, he used Pet Clinic implemented with Spring Boot, but it took a little while to not a little while, but a while to restart. Are you going to improve this thing?
Now when the Spring loaded is dead, so
Yeah. So the question is, are we going to provide a reloading capability? We have a dormant agent, a Java agent called Spring Loaded.
you had
It's still there. We're just not maintaining. We don't have anything to add to it because we don't have the resources. Pull requests are welcome. Here's the problem. Reloading the byte code from a class on the class loader is not actually that. It's difficult, but it's not a 5-year journey. It's more like a weekend for a mad scientist. Okay, so we have a mad scientist on the team. His name is Andy Clement. He's you know what the Ironman tournament, the Ironman competition is. It's like running and swimming and I don't know, flying something. It's crazy. Cycling. There you go. It's not flying. It could be flying. He flies. So this guy is insane. He's just an amazing superhuman. And then he's also the guy that in 2009. In 2009, I was watching the commit logs in Subversion, which is none of you are old enough. It looks like. We had this thing called Subversion years ago before Git, and I was watching the commit logs and Subversion as Spring 3 was being developed. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I wonder what Andy's doing. And he was writing the Spring expression language. And he used a, like Lex and Bison, there's something called Antler. It's a recursive descent generator grammar. Okay, it's Antler.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I think people ask who knows what I'm talking
Who knows what Antler is? Oh, good. Okay, my kind of crowd. So the point is he used that to build the Spring expression language. And I don't know if you've ever used the Spring expression language, but it's capable of doing more than OGNL. It's capable of doing more than the JSF or JSP expression languages.
Spring expression language is a huge gun
Yeah.
pointed to your leg.
The point is it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's
and
my point.
And he did it,
Pointed to your leg.
but, well, he did it in a week. And I thought, oh, that's incredible. Look at all this crazy cool stuff he did. And it's more powerful than this stuff that, all these other companies managed to do in years. And then I thought, well, that's amazing. And then next week I checked the code. He threw it all away. He wrote it by hand because it was faster instead of using Antler. And I'm like, who does that? Like, Antler's amazing, and he did a great job. And it was only a week it took him to do the whole language. And then he did it again, and he works on the Eclipse stuff. So he's crazy. He's a crazy genius. And he worked on this, he did a talk at Java 1, which is a conference that we have that isn't as cool as this one. And
But the name is better.
well, it's closer to Spring. Yeah, I like that. Java Spring 1 would be nice. So anyway, he did this one demo out of like 4 demos in one talk at Java 1. So it was just 1 out of 4 demos, and the demo was doing bytecode reloading, including constructors and parent classes and fields and all this stuff. And he created a virtual dispatch table, an extra. He added a Java agent, and then it had a dispatch table that reloaded the bytes for your code. So he did that trick in a weekend. It was just 1 demo for a 1-hour talk. That's amazing, right? No, and it was not even hard. That's not the hard problem, though. The problem is, once you've changed the bytecode on the class file system, how do you teach the frameworks that sit on top of it what just happened? How do you tell Hibernate, hey, by the way, the object that you loaded and matched against the database and validated, it's not there anymore, or it looks different. Same for Spring, same for JSF, same for Struts, same for any framework that does these things at startup. So the real hard work is writing the plugins to do all this state transformation. JRebel, Zero Turnaround, they've done that work. And so that's why if I had to pick something today, that's probably what I would go with. It works. It's all these plugins, and they've done a great job. So I can't really tell you.
The only question is, so regarding to that, we only need to figure out how can we use it with the open source projects and this kind of stuff. That's the only thing.
It's not ideal for. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a great answer, but that's the best I can find. If you use Spring Loaded, it works for basics, but if you want the real extra mile, that's probably zero. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
2 more questions. First of all, currently spell is some kind of subset of language, partially based on Java, but improved. So it's already some kind of language. So you don't have any plans to replace it with some existing language, for example, Groovy or some other? Because
idea. I think there is a plot here, and they ditched Groovy because they are going to develop their own language. How about that?
I don't think we're nobody's told me that.
No one told you anything.
Nobody tells me anything. That's true. So you want to know about using some other language instead of spell? No, it's.
He only deleted it once. He can delete
Yeah,
it again.
but no, he just made it faster in 2 weeks, no less. So recently, in Spring 4.1, we introduced an optimization so that frequently accessed hot path spell expressions get compiled. So if you're, yeah, basically, which is like, what the hell? So yeah, this so crazy. Like this guy's just what he does in a day, most of us will never do in a year. So anyway, there are optimizations, there are things being done to fix it, and add improvements. But again, it's not supposed to be a full-featured language. Separate from that, Spring 4.2 is going to be improving the story for what's the JSR for scripting environments? You know what I'm talking about. There's updated support, and I'm not sure what that looks like, but 4.2 will have even more improvements, and it'll in particular it'll be Java config and bean definitions from scripting languages. So we had that support in Spring 3 or 3.1. No, 2.5 had the first one, right? Script colon, whatever. So that support will be. Script colon bean. That support will be updated. So we're still very concerned about making that usable, but it's not the same as spell. But it is.
By the way, let's ask the people. Does anybody here use a lot of spell? Not just one little expression, but use spell.
Heavily.
Okay, thank you.
It's a powerful thing for things like Spring integration. But even in Spring integration, now you have this Spring integration Java config DSL. Using lambdas is awesome, So I don't know. I use it for touches of things. Well, okay. I don't know. How many of you even knew about it? First of all, how many of you knew about spell? Okay, well. So I think you could probably find a use if you wanted to. It's really powerful, but
better not to use it.
Yeah, too powerful.
I don't know about that. Geez.
Dangerous.
It's not.
The problem is it's addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the second one, currently starters are codeless. So you only need to define dependencies. So it's just some kind of definition of dependencies. But you still can write your starters with code. So as it did in some third-party starters, and it's working. So nothing special. As far as I know, it was some kind of principal decision to make them codeless. So any plans to change it and to officially allow codeful starters, because currently it's some kind of pain to define 2 models instead of 1 and to distribute 2 models instead of 1 just for small starter.
We might actually change. So in 1.3, there is some discussion. Dave Sire, the good Dr. Sire, he's a doctor. I love that he's a doctor. Good Dr. Sire, who's my hero, he wants to change it because what we did for Spring Boot was we said, okay, well we have all these auto configurations that have types on the class path, and they're conditional on these types. We hope that people will use the starters, but we don't require you to. If you want the functionality and you've just added the one jar that enables that one piece of functionality, great. Maybe you didn't do it through our starter. So we wanted to keep those separate. And but now Spring Boot is just 2 jars. It's the auto configuration and then the actuator auto configuration, basically. So I think, and then there's the core, right? The core bits. So it's like 3 jars of code, and the rest are just definitions of palms, of dependencies. I think there's no reason you can't, on the third parties, have the code in the starter. We don't, it's entirely up to the third party. I think we might even change it in Spring Boot because we have so much code now in 1 jar. All these auto configurations for like 20 different projects. But I know that I've done or started. I tend to start but never finish lots of different third-party projects, and I work with these different. So Activities, the workflow engine, that one has code. The Vaadin one, I think, has code as well. Stormpath, the security identity provider, has code as well. So I think, it's fine. If you know what you're doing and you expect that anybody who has this dependency will have all the code, then why not, Is that okay? I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Many developers love dependency injection but prefer Google Juice because it's more lightweight. Do you have any plans to make Spring more lightweight?
I might answer that if you don't mind, Josh.
I want to do something else. Who uses Juice? Yeah, who uses Juice? Yeah, okay. Many developers was an overstatement. Yeah, that's better.
So what do you call lightweight? Because in the last, and when I say in the last, only very early Spring releases were monolithic jars. Now you have many, many modules, so you can just get Spring Core, perhaps if you want Spring Context, and you're done. And it's very, very lightweight. You cannot find more lightweight than that. It's modularized, so you pick what you want.
And the thing is, the other way around is not available for you. So if you want less, you can have them both ways. But if you want more, if you want support for all the modules, then you can only have it in Spring.
But I should mention, if you're using Juice, we have a Juice and Spring Bridge in Spring Boot. I think the Rat Pack thing requires, the Eureka stuff for Spring Cloud has that. And then
Rat Pack.
Right, yeah, yep. As well. And then also JSR 330 was developed by Bob Lee from the Juice team, of course, and at Google. He was at Square after that, where he helped develop Dagger, and now he's just off enjoying his money. And then Rod Johnson, who is also off enjoying his money.
And that was the shortest JSR ever.
Right, exactly. That was javix.inject, javix.inject.named, and javix.inject.provider, and seven types. So if you want to use Juice, great, but if you want the same kind of programming model, JSR 330 will give you most of that. And then your provider methods in Juice and the modules are going to look like Java config in Spring. And that doesn't, I hope that maybe it won't be so bad for you. I hope.
But perhaps if you are acquainted with the Google guys, you might ask them to get some Guava that are modularized.
Okay, I have one more question. Why Spring Core is divided on three jars? Why don't we have one jar just to add to our project and run?
I would say, is the core usable
Yeah,
without the
beans.
context or without the beans? Or one without the other?
What are the three jars?
I mean, string, beans, context, and
No, yeah. Course,
Context and beans.
Those are the mandatory minimum. And the question is why there are two actually. Spring core.
So we don't have to have questions about when will it be more lightweight. Like, it's you can in theory. So remember, it's Spring 1.0. Before application context, there was the bean factory, and then the application context was an abstraction that was added on top of that to support this idea for concerns that most applications will have. But in terms of just here's a container and I want to manage objects, that's the bean factory, and you can use that straight. You can use that directly without XML, without Java config, without all this stuff. So these things are actually separate pieces, or at least they used to be. I agree that today you're probably going to use an application context, you're probably going to use Java config, and you probably don't care to use the bean factory and the bean metadata directly anymore. But in theory, I mean, that was they used to be separate things. When I first learned Spring, I learned about the bean factory. That's what we had to care about. And then the application context came later. It's like, oh, that's nice, So I don't know. Is that okay? I don't have a great answer. I'm sorry.
Source, yep. Those will be the two last.
Why Spring Boot Actuator metrics has no default user interface and only JSON API? And is it planned to have in future?
Again, please.
So why doesn't the actuator stuff have a default user interface? The question is, why doesn't the Spring Boot actuator stuff have a default interface? It does. It has JConsole, right? The JMX stuff. You can use JMX for all those endpoints. The rest is a user interface. It's a very programmer-friendly interface. I understand what you're asking. Why isn't there a dashboard? And so you can plug in. So the idea is that we automatically, if you're using Spring Boot, we have a framework called Actuator. Actuator answers questions about the state of the application. It's good for operations in particular. Your operations people will give you a hug. It's you answer questions like how much memory do you have, how many beans are loaded, the request logs, all this stuff. And that's very useful information. By default, we keep it in memory, but it's all based on dependency injection. So it's just interfaces. You plug in your own implementation, and it can write to whatever you want. And then we also support the Drop Wizard or Coda Hail or Yammer metrics library. So anything that you can report to, anything that you can write to from that library, including Graphite, including Ganglia and Capsaicin and all these different things, you can write to from the Spring Boot actuator framework. There's an adapter, basically, a bridge. So we don't provide the default because there's so many other great tools that'll do that, including, have you seen the Spring Boot remote shell? Oh, dude, Spring Boot starter actuator remote -shell. Come to me afterwards. I'll show it to you. It'll blow your mind. It's amazing. So cool. I should have done that. But point is, there's a lot of other better ones.
I have a very simple answer because every operational team has already its own user interface. So if Spring Boot Actuator gives you one, it won't be used.
I'm learning Groovy now, and I want to develop my pet project web application, and I don't know what to use, Grails or Groovy plus Spring. What do you say about this?
Grails is Groovy plus Spring. So that's it, right?
Netflix is a big company in the West. They have a lot of projects that are Spring Boot plus Grails. Plus Groovy. Yep. Right? Which is great. But
Grails 3 is Spring Boot.
So Grails 3 now is also, it's based on Spring Boot. It gives you Groovy. It is specialized and focused on web applications, right? You're not supposed to go there and build your batch process. That's not the right place for Spring Batch, So it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build a web application, of course Grails is a more polished, more smooth experience. Of course, you still need to use Groovy, and if you aren't using Groovy, then shame on you. But if you if you absolutely can't, then of course Grails is probably not the best choice. On the other hand, there's something called JHipster. How many of you have heard of JHipster? JHipster is a Yaomin code generator. It's a Node NPM-based tool called Yo. It's called Yaomin, and it's a code generator, and it'll generate a Java Spring Boot app and it'll handle a lot of web development concerns as well, kind of like Grails, but without the Groovy language.
No, so I think the question was the guys learning Groovy.
Then if you're using Groovy and you want to do a web app, then Grails is perfect.
That was the concept.
And you get all the power of Spring Boot plus more. And you get the amazing Groovy language. So that is an amazing, amazing combination, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, please.
Okay, I think we're out of time.
Спасибо. Yep. Thank you.